Hello, good morning. Hope everyone's doing well on this fine Wednesday. I am hoping that this session goes by smoothly, unlike the last time I was on recording today, which was not so smooth. Okay, so this morning we have a few questions that have come up that I wanted to go over that Christina sent over, so awesome. So the first one is, why is monitoring my returns important? What should I be looking for? So for returns, there's two things that are important that a lot of folks don't do. The first thing is that you should be tracking in some way. You should be tracking your profitability per child ASIN. And right now you can check returns rates, refund rates in your overall metrics deck, the reports, business reports, detail page sales and traffic. If you go there, you can get the overall refund rate and then by day for your account, but that doesn't give you by ASIN. So the returns reports allow you to join an Excel with your sales data and then see what your individual line item return reports are. So then you can see which ones are doing very poorly, which ones are doing very well, which ones you need to look into. And then you can actually join that data with payments data and see if you're paying extra for returns there. For example, in clothing, there's restocking fees. So if you have restocking fees, you'll want to join that data as well, so you can see if they're profitable at all. The second reason why returns are important is because you need to know what people are saying about your product. You need to know why they're saying it so that you can make changes. If you have control over the product, then you can make changes to the product. Like if you can work with a factory on it, or you can make changes yourself, whatever the situation may be. If you are working wholesale or you're doing some sort of arbitrage, then your decision is much more simple. It's, should I change my packaging or should I stop selling it at all? So those are much easier answers than, how do I fix this problem that this customer has on my own product? And then when they have a problem, they actually tell you about it, respond to them as though they sent you a message. The way that the interface works as a customer, it looks like you're sending a message. And so they may think that they're sending you a message and asking for help or making a comment or whatever. And then if you don't ever answer, then that means that your customer service isn't as good as you think it is. We had a lot of folks who are just so proud of their customer service, and we point out all these returns comments. They're like, what? There's returns comments? What is that? So if you have any interest in learning more about our returns program, we basically have a program where we keep track of folks' accounts on a daily basis and then do deep dive return reports each week. If you're interested in that, let Christina know. But that's something that we do on a regular basis because returns are so important. Understanding your defect rate can have a direct impact on your bottom line. If your defect rate goes above a certain amount, obviously you're no longer profitable. So knowing what those numbers are pretty important. Okay, the second question is there a way to request reimbursement for switcheroo? Switcheroo is basically when the customer receives a product that they didn't intend to receive, so it's a mistake at the FC, or when the product that was returned by the customer is not the product that was expected. So either of those will be clogged as switcheroos. And no, there's not a way to request a reimbursement. You can pull your stuff back from Amazon, and if you get something that isn't your product, then you can complain to Amazon and ask for a reimbursement. But you have to actually have it in hand to take a look at it first. You just don't have enough data for what Amazon gives you. They don't give you pictures. They don't give you information there. So you can't contact them and say, hey, so that's actually not my product. You have to actually return it to yourself first. Now, the real problem is when someone at the FC returns place gets a return that's not yours and then puts it back into your inventory. That's super, super frustrating. So not the best answer, but that is the case. You really can't do very much about it. And mistakes happen, right? Amazon keeps track of these kind of mistakes by DPMO, defects per million orders. And so they have specific targets and goals for how many defects they're willing to accept per million orders. So mistakes happen, right? You're never going to have a defect-free world, but if you can get the items returned to you, you can have a better concept of what needs to be fixed. Or if you do need to request a reimbursement without returning it to you, switcheroos are really difficult to investigate. Okay, how can I sell on Amazon if my country is not eligible? This is a really good question, and quite honestly, there's not much that we can do to help in that case. The best thing to do is to find a partner in another country and work with them. So if you're from, say, Nigeria, or if you are from, I think there's, I know Nigeria is one of them, but there's a few others, like maybe Somalia might be. In any case, there's a few places where Amazon is deemed there to be significant risk from a business perspective, or there's some sort of risk from a legal perspective or some sort of sanctions issue. So obviously no Iran or North Korean sellers, no sellers from Iran or North Korea. If that's the case, then what you want to do is you want to find someone from a country that is eligible and work with them. I know that can be difficult, but there are online forums and folks that you can reach out to, groups, or you can reach out to folks and try to get someone to work with there. And it could be good as a partnership. You know, there's a lot of production that happens in Africa now that didn't used to. So maybe it's something where you can form a partnership with someone who is outside of Africa and be able to develop a business that way. I know that I was just looking at someone's shirt recently, a model shirt. She showed up with a regular old t-shirt, and I was fascinated because the t-shirt was made in Kenya. And I don't remember ever seeing any imports to the US made in Africa. Africa is very famous for raw materials, lots of raw materials coming out of Africa that very few people in Africa benefit from. But for Africa in general, finished goods are just not that common, and just saw that this year, t-shirts coming out of Kenya. So that's something to think about if you're from a country where Amazon is not permitted for you to sign up, is to find a business partner. And you'd obviously want to make sure that you have a contract in place with that business partner so that you can defend your interests if need be. But that's really the only way to do it legally. Now, if you want to try to find other avenues for it, you could always create an entity in another country and then register that, but that would be a little bit more complicated. And I would suggest talking to a CPA and a lawyer if you want to do something like that. Okay. Next, is there something, if there is something wrong with a developed product that results in some sort of bad outcome that is found to be due to the product's packaging process or content quality, does the liability lie primarily with the manufacturer, me, someone else entirely? This is a great question. And this is something that I bring up a lot and talk about a lot, because a lot of people don't understand where the liability rests in these kind of situations, or how they could be impacting their overall liability by just existing and doing the things that they have been doing. So first of all, the most important type of liability lies with the manufacturer. If you're the one making the product, then all the liability rests with you in general. So if you are, so we knew someone who was making bath bomb gift sets in their garage. And they basically were doing these bath bombs, and they were packaging it in a nice box with a couple of other things they were bundling with it, but they were handmade bath bombs. With that, you need to make sure that you are keeping track of those by lot code, follow all FDA process and procedures, and register. Because if you are not registered, you can get your entire operation shut down. And FDA does not, they have no sense of humor, none. I think the only people who don't have a sense of humor worse than the FDA are like local health inspectors who pour bleach on, like people selling cookies on the side of the road. They just don't have a sense of humor about it. So with something like that, if you're the manufacturer, if you're making the product, double check and follow all the rules, because the liability rests entirely with you. Now, for imports, the importer is considered the same level as a manufacturer in terms of liability. So if it's a Chinese manufacturer and you're the one importing it to the US or the UK or wherever, then you're the one that the liability rests with, not the Chinese manufacturer, right? And they don't have to meet regulations at all because you're the one who's liable. So we see this all the time where people are buying on Alibaba and have no idea that the item is actually not legal to sell in the US. Just blows my mind. Now, if you're buying something through retail chain, like from a distributor or wholesale in the US, then the liability rests with the manufacturer, the importer who brought it into the US. As a retailer, as long as you buy and resell exactly as is, the liability rests with who you bought it from. The difference here, though, and this is an important point for a lot of Amazon sellers or people who do bundling, is if you repackage it, take it out of its package and put it into a new package, then you are becoming liable. So FDA calls that a repackager. They're very clever with their words. And that actually is a known thing for the FDA, where they know that people are repackaging things or putting it in a new box or putting it into a kit, etc. And they consider that person in the chain also liable. So make sure that if you're repackaging something or bundling something, that you put in all of the warnings and information into the bundle, not just the product itself. Okay. I know some people will take everything out and then repackage it so they can repackage it nicely, like gift bundles at Christmas. Make sure that you've got things labeled properly. If there was a warning on the original item, the warning needs to be carried through to your bundle. You can redo the whole packaging labeling thing if you want. Just make sure that all of the original content from the manufacturer or the importer gets carried over to your bundle. Okay? All right. So the next question is missing the social coupon option. Want to use the social coupon, but it is not showing up in the promo menu, brand registered and have storefront, etc. Have you contacted seller support? That is definitely a glitch. So it doesn't matter if you're brand registered. As long as you have an account, you should have the social coupon option. So for that one, I would actually just recommend reaching out directly to seller support and complaining, because that sounds like a glitch on your account. Okay, next question is, my product involves non-toxic gel packs. Could it ever trigger something on Amazon where they think it is something toxic, chemical, or get me suspended? It depends on someone complains, right? If someone complains and says this gel pack broke open and then it seared my finger and now I've got warts and I look like I'm in some sort of DC comic, yes, you're going to have your listing suspended. And sometimes one complaint isn't enough, depends on how serious Amazon takes it, but typically one safety complaint is enough to get your listing taken down. So you definitely need to make sure that non-toxic is something you've tested. There's a basic test for it. Just because a Chinese manufacturer says it's non-toxic does not mean that it actually is. We worked with a client who was getting complaints about a lot of red eye. It was a cosmetic product. And so we helped her test it, and basically it was bacterial testing. And it failed for, let me see if I can get this right, bile-tolerant gram-negative bacteria. This is a particular kind of bacteria that can cause sepsis if it gets into the bloodstream. And when it gets into mucous membranes, it causes redness and swelling. So actually the water that was used to produce the cosmetic was likely the culprit, because Chinese water is disgusting. And it likely was not purified or cleaned before it was used in the production of the product. And so even though the manufacturer had said that it was non-toxic, their production process actually introduced bacteria into the product and then irritated customers' eyes, caused negative reviews, like it was bad. So just because the manufacturer said it's non-toxic doesn't mean that you're off the hook, right? You need to have paperwork to demonstrate that it's non-toxic. Test reports are the easiest way to do this. Amazon accepts test reports. Hopefully that is clear. Just because they say non-toxic, just because the manufacturer says non-toxic, doesn't mean that Amazon is going to believe non-toxic. You have to prove it. It really will require a customer complaint, though. Just because it's something that could be non-toxic doesn't mean Amazon will look into it. It has to take a customer complaint to be taken seriously. Okay, next question. There are new targeting options in PPC ads targeting companies or products. Any insight on how to take advantage of this new advertising model? So this just showed up over the last couple of days. So no insight yet. I'll be testing. I'll be looking at things and running different kinds of ads to see how they perform. And as soon as I have more information, I will share with you. All that I can say about that right now is I'm super excited. Amazon's starting to do more than keyword ads. Yay. Given the amount of data that Amazon has on all of us, they could kill Google and Facebook. Sorry, Google and Facebook, but Amazon knows more about customers than you do. I promise. It's absolutely amazing how much they know about customers. I don't know if that's the right word for it. If you have a chance, watch Hasan Minhaj's Netflix special on Amazon. It's hilarious. And at the end, he's like, "Yeah, but I'm just not willing to give up Prime Now. I'm not woke enough. I'm more lazy than woke." And I'm like, "Yep, they make it that convenient and easy for customers. It's just going to keep going." All right, the next question is, Zon Pages is an Amazon lead page generator. The question is if it violates any Amazon policies, and if it is not, is it beneficial? Excuse me. I believe this was the one that someone brought across our desk where it was saying that you could validate real customer email addresses with a ClickFunnels. And the problem with that is that you're not supposed to be using real customer contact information, even if the customer provides it to you, to market to off Amazon in off Amazon methods. Now, people do this and they're very successful at it, but if Amazon finds out, either because a customer complained or a seller turned you in or something, then it's going to be a problem. We had a client who was suspended earlier this year because he had a whole complicated funnel, the same way the ZonPages works, where in the box, it would say, go here for your free bottle. Then you would go to that website for the free bottle. You would type in your name and your email address. That would then go and validate the email address on the Amazon side, because you can actually validate real email addresses. I think this is a glitch. It's not supposed to be a thing, but you can validate real email addresses and then provide the order ID. Say, yep, that's the one. And then they then can provide you proof that they wrote a review and then get the free bottle. So this was his whole cycle. This is his funnel. And he thought that it was totally reasonable because first, the customer was providing the data, and second, he didn't require them to leave a good review to get the free product. That's not what Amazon cares about. Amazon cares about free product for review. That's it. Free product for review. No caveats. Just no free products for reviews. That's what Amazon expects. So just know that there's no like caveats or ways around it or someone telling you that it's within terms of service. It's not. So anytime you offer something for free or significantly discounted, like 80+% in exchange for a review, or as part of a review funnel, then you're going to have a problem. Now, for that particular client, we had to basically list out every single order ID that he had validated, and they removed every single one. Absolutely horrible. So don't do that. But then he was also kind of overdoing it because he was trying to get, hundreds and hundreds of reviews. So if you don't overdo it, then Amazon's not likely to catch you at it. So again, ZonPages works. Things like ZonPages work with basically ClickFunnels using Amazon systems. They absolutely work to drive sales. It is not just gray hat. It's very close to completely violating terms of service. There's multiple sections of it that are very problematic. So if you're going to do that, just make sure you understand that there's a significant risk. If you make a lot of money at it, make sure you set aside some money for the rainy day that may be coming sooner rather than later. Most reputable reinstatement firms are anywhere between $1,500 and $3,000 to support you with a reinstatement. And then you have the non-sales for the period of time that you're down. So our client who we got back, it took 5 days to get back, but he was a client who was making over $2 million a month. So 5 days was a lot of money. So 5 days was good. We got him back, and he had a friend who was making, I think it was like 2.5 million a month and got shut down permanently. So he was grateful. 5 days, great. Totally happy with that. But it was still a lot of money lost. So just keep in mind that just because it works doesn't mean that you should do it. Okay. Next question is, so I am exporting US products to the EU. Their product wraps around food, and I know there are separate regulations in the EU for this. So question 1, I am primarily liable as the exporter, the importer into the EU. Yeah. And how would I ever get the product compliant for the EU? So this is something that I was a little bit concerned about for your product. But the good news for you is that the actual enforcement level with products like this, the actual level of people doing anything about this kind of product in the EU is really slim. It's just not that common, because the biggest concern for them is the actual plastic wrap itself that touches the food, not the cutter. So for that's the thing there. So that's totally fine. If you are using something that touches food, you have a problem. If you are using an accessory that goes around food, totally fine. No worries. Don't worry about it. For the actual regulations, though, there are a whole bunch of regulations that you're supposed to meet, and you're never going to be able to do it. Just saying it totally fairly. It's just not going to be possible. If someone actually made a product that was compliant for the EU, it would be too expensive for the US market. So that's just something that you have to just be okay with. For anything that is included, if the actual touching food thing is included, just double check that particular kind of thing is approved for the EU, or just don't send it with that. So that would be the thing that I would worry about, not the part that is wrapped around it, but the actual, anything that actually touches food. And then again, it's food contact, which is just not that enforced anywhere. I think the last big recall action that happened on food contact was, what were they? They were like these Fiesta Bowls from Arizona. And they were really cool. They were like this bright orange, and they were really nifty. And they were super nifty because they were using the dye, the thing to make it super bright and cool was from that region, from Arizona, and it was totally chock full of uranium. And so it was like toxic to eat off of. And so that was a big problem. So if it's not toxic to eat off of, most of the time countries aren't that worried about it, because those kind of things happen over time and it's hard to prove. So again, like there's risk areas. I would never in a million years import toys or children's products from the US to the EU. Never. Just don't do it ever, 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 unless you have documentation that it meets EN 71 or whatever the appropriate European code is. Just don't import that. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that's completely reasonable, that you'll be fine. And then double check the different countries. So the UK is going to be a lot more lenient about food contact and a lot more strict about supplements and herbals, any sort of herbal type stuff. And then Germany is more strict about food contact and food products. So just check with someone who knows about that space before you add something new to it. But as far as your particular situation, I actually think that your product is fine going into the EU. But just know that there is a little risk. Okay. So the next question, let's see. I actually think that was it. I went through all the questions there. So it depends on what your insurance covers, Gretchen. So double check with them if that's covered. Sometimes insurance won't cover it if you haven't dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's and stuff. And you can't in certain situations. If you have an exclusive relationship with a manufacturer, which I highly recommend to you guys, if you have exclusives, that's a huge plus. You never know what kind of awesome things you can do once you start getting some decent sales, what they'll be willing to do with you and to grow with you. The only problem is they can sometimes cut you out and do it themselves. Although sometimes I don't think they realize how difficult it is. We had a client earlier this year who was a manufacturer of supplements in the US. And he was like, man, my FBA sellers are killing it. I need to get in on this myself. And he started trying to sell and realized that actually Amazon's hard. And it lasted, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months. And he started experiencing all the issues that Amazon sellers face. He got his brand registry stuck. There were a whole bunch of problems with the listings not updating, some problems with in stock, some things got lost. And he was like, actually dealing with Amazon is so lame. I'm going to go back to just supplying my FBA sellers and they can sell it for me. And so, a lot of brands may not choose to go onto Amazon themselves because it's so much extra effort, and we'll continue to work with you. What I mean by exclusive, Vanessa, is that you work with a manufacturer directly, whoever that might be, and you're the representative on Amazon. That's a huge benefit for you because then you get all the benefits of a brand without having the liability, which is what Gretchen is mentioning here, trying to get them to assume the liability for their product, because that's obviously the best position to be in. They have all the liability and the risk, and you have an exclusive product that you can sell on Amazon. So that's really the best of both worlds, but it's hard to find those opportunities. Mike says, can you elaborate on the risk of supplement produced in the US to be imported into UK? Yeah. So the problem in the UK versus the US is a whole class of stuff that's not considered drugs in the US, dietary supplements, basically. And this was from, I think, 1994. And I think it was when Newt Gingrich was in charge of the House. And they basically came up with this definition of dietary supplements just needing to be labeled as such, that they haven't been approved by a doctor for use, et cetera, et cetera. The UK does not have that. They actually regulate pretty much everything. There's very few things that are unregulated in the UK like there is in the US, where this huge swaths of what's on the shelf is almost completely unregulated, other than making sure that it doesn't kill you. So for the UK, there's multiple things that you can't say on your package. You can't say that it solves certain kinds of disease claims. Those are similar to the US, no disease claims. But there's also differences in terms of registration of ingredients. So all ingredients need to be registered. Certain ingredients can't be used in over-the-counter applications. Certain warnings need to be in place. The warnings for the US are different than the warnings for the UK. So you definitely want to make sure if you're bringing any supplements to the UK that you've gone through, I think it's the MHRA. In any case, you need to go through the requirements for the UK and make sure that your packaging is compliant, that your product is compliant. They have fairly well-staffed investigative personnel, and so things get taken down on Amazon all the time. Not to mention that Amazon will take it down because they want to have good relationships with the UK regulatory authorities. A few years back, in the UK, there was a bunch of this is something that was well known at the time. There's a bunch of hazardous materials that were being shipped by plane that were causing fires. And basically in the UK, they were like, you know what, Amazon, we don't care if you're a big company. We're not going to let you ship anymore. And so it's a little bit different. The regulatory environment in the EU is a little bit different because regulators there actually have power. Here, it's all about money. I mean, it really is. It's about who has the most money, who can buy off the most people. It's kind of sad. It's not obvious like that. In other countries, it's like super obvious, like, here's your money. Here, it's a lot more roundabout and who's going to donate to what and who's going to endow this or who's going to do whatever. But in Europe, it's very different. They have fully staffed regulatory agencies. They'll have, just for product compliance in France, just in France, they have twice as many employees as the entirety of the United States for product safety. So you think about all the other different things that they're funding and that they're supporting, you're just much more likely to get caught there if something goes wrong. Okay. And yeah, Gretchen, manufacturers have no idea. Amazon sucks. No one wants to deal with it if they can help it. So that's why they hire folks like us to manage it for them, or they work directly with an exclusive seller. Those are really the best options for a lot of manufacturers, because dealing with Amazon, if you aren't willing to learn it, is very frustrating. Yes, thank you, Christina. So the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, yeah, MHRA, yay. Yeah. It is something I do every day. All right, hopefully everyone's questions are answered for today. If not, please pop into our Facebook group, the Former Amazonians Guide to the Zon. And this is, it's a closed group, but anyone can join. And so we have a lot of questions that pop up in there and a lot of inquiries and clarifications. And I'm in there at least a couple times a week, as well as other team members answering questions. And it's a fully curated group. So you don't have to worry about someone answering something and it not being read or letting it stand as being advice that shouldn't be followed. So I see this all the time. So the other groups where they're not really curated. And so sellers are advising other sellers things and saying, oh yeah, you can definitely do that. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Yes, thank you, Christina. There's the link to the group. And if anyone wants to join and ask their question there, please do so, or join us next week for our Wednesday morning session together. Okay, so that's it. There were a ton of questions this week. I'm not surprised going into Q4. There's always so many questions. But I look forward to answering more of your questions next week. And hopefully you guys have a great day. Bye now.